the Nintendo DS released in a very weird time in Nintendo's history because it released after the GameCube, which wasn't a failure. It had great games and whatnot, but it had the PS2 as competition, and the PS2 sold about as many units as Oxygen. um, and it just couldn't leave a mark. There was just no way, and it wasn't a failure, but it wasn't the cash cow that Nintendo perhaps hoped it would be. And the Wii was still in its experimental R&D phase, so that was some years away from releasing as well. And the Game Boy line was definitely showing its age, and the transition from 2D to 3D had to happen in some capacity. Um, Nintendo's handhelds by that era were basically they were it, right? Sega had given up on console gaming in general at that point, and Sony still hadn't released the PSP, so they were the only ones doing handhelds at the time in a significant manner. So and when they actually showcased the DS and they showcased how you could play Mario 64 portably on a device that's not significantly bigger than a Game Boy SP, that was cool. That was really something. But just like always, just in case it bombed, they included the Game Boy Advance cartridge slot. So if the DS bombed, they could argue, oh well, the DS was just a side project-ish. You can still play Game Boy games on it, and it's like an upgraded Game Boy. Done. But that didn't happen, thankfully. They moved full steam ahead, and it was all fine with the DS and the DS Lite and the DSi and the 3DS and whatnot after it. But I think that might mark the end of the portable console as we know it. Um, and I don't just mean it from because of mobile gaming, although that's a pretty big factor as well. It's the fact that the Switch is just too good. The Switch demonstrated something that Nintendo had probably been aiming for with the Wii U, but wasn't able to because of technical limitations, which is the fact that you could have home console level experiences on a portable device, and they finally achieved it with the Switch. But I think that's it. I mean, we're not gonna see a miniature Switch anytime soon. The closest that we're gonna get is a Switch Lite, which is why I think the Switch Lite is the DS. When you think about it, the Switch Lite is the only portable only console that Nintendo has made in a long time. I mean, the last time the 2DS XL was discontinued alongside the Switch release in 2019, I believe, if not 2020 if stocks lasted, which means that it's the only portable sort of non-home console or main console Nintendo device we've gotten since 2019, so more than half a decade. Um, and when you think about it, a lot of the things carry over. The Switch Lite is a bit smaller than the normal Switch, smaller screen, less resolution, mind you, obviously, and no switching, which is kind of funny. But I think it's the best replacement for a DS when you think about it, because it had only one objective, which is to be cheaper and more portable than the normal Switch. That was it, but it could play all the same games, because at least on paper, it had the same specs. I've heard some people talk how the memory might be slightly underclocked on the Switch Lite, but I don't think it's gonna be like significant enough for you to actually notice it that much during gameplay. Um, but obviously, the big standout is the fact that you can't dock it. At least not in a first party way. I've seen people do some funky stuff with like adapters and whatnot with the USB-C port on the bottom. I'm not sure. But either way, I think the Switch Lite does actually offer a lot of the same benefits as the 3DS did, especially. The DS, slightly lesser so. I don't think the DS got enough mainline um, game ports on it to justify being like a home console on the go sort of experience. But I think the 3DS actually got pretty close to it between Kirby's Dream Land, and well, the Pokemon games on the 3DS were, hit or miss story wise. I'm still a, black and white 2 person myself, but Omega Ruby, Alpha Sapphire, Sun and Moon, Ultra Sun and Moon, they're all pretty good games. Debatable, but still pretty good. All the Mario games were fantastic. I still think that Mario 3D Land is like probably my favorite Mario game, or at least favorite Mario platformer. Of course, behind Odyssey. I think Odyssey is a great time. But yeah, I mean, the 3DS really was um, close to offering a home console level experience, even though the technical specifications just weren't there. In fact, in case any of you watching this didn't know, the 3DS had 128 megabytes of RAM. That's it. That's all you had to work with on the 3DS. Whatever assets and visual effects you see on screen, like in Metroid Prime or whatever, that was all fitting in what is essentially like um, 1/16th of an iPhone 3GS. Like, yikes. If you take like 4K photos on your phone, it can fit about 10 of those before running out of memory. Yeah, 10 should be right, or 8. But you get the idea. It was super limited, but it did a lot with the hardware that it was given. The fact that the new 3DS with the updated chip and more memory was able to play games like what was that one upgraded game again? For the semi-open world one, I forget, but I think Nintendo people watching this will know. Among others, mind you, not a lot of games actually took advantage of the new 3DS hardware, other than Minecraft. That was one of them. Either way, when you look at the market right now for used consoles, I've already said this in my other video going over why you should buy a Wii right now. Um, Used 3DSs are now more expensive than some normal non-OLED Switches, and that's crazy. Like, I'm sorry, it's crazy. The 3DS has great games, but the Switch has even better games, and it's more modern. You get the idea. There's still things that I dislike about the Switch. I don't like the Joy-Con drift. I don't like some of Nintendo's, let's just say, anti-consumer practices. But I also don't like the hinges on the 3DS XL is breaking all the time. And I don't like how hard it is to get a 3DS cartridge used. And I also don't like how the 3DS eShop closed down. So you have your ups and downs and pros and cons with each, I feel like. So yeah, I mean, if I'm right now looking for a second-hand Nintendo console, and I'm presented with two options, a normal DSi XL slash 2DS, or a Switch Lite for the same amount of money, I'll go with the Switch Lite, because in essence, it is a new DS. It's a it's a spiritual continuation of the console, not by name, not by technical specs, but if you just go by the sense that it is a purely portable console, check, that can play console level titles. In fact, it's not just level, it's console level, it's normal console titles, check, and it's the cheapest option out of all the other Switches, check. I would go for the Switch Lite. Obviously, if you want the regular Switch because you want to dock it and whatnot, go right ahead. But personally, I'm not super big on the docking aspect of the Switch as some other people are. Mainly because I only have my Xbox as like my multimedia box at my house, so I have less of a need for a big screen TV console. That being said, Switch Lite, purely portable, and well, I mean, if this video was made a bit earlier, I would have probably suggested, you look for a used Steam Deck. Well, Steam Decks are now starting from like what, 800 euros or 759 in the US, I think, after the price hikes, and the second-hand ones aren't gonna go for a lot lower than that. I mean, demand is already sky high. There's not much stock, and there's a waiting list over some of the higher versions, from what I understand. So that's what I would do probably. Secondhand Switch games are still um, decently cheap. They're certainly getting cheaper. Um, so for under 100 euros, you could still probably get a Switch Lite and a couple games that you like just to get you started, and that's a jolly old time. You still got about 1 month of summer left, so if you act quick now, you could probably get some use out of it before school starts. Um, but yeah, this has just been another one of my mostly rambling videos. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you later.